I think it's relevant because I think it makes a difference to how we view our lives and how we interact with other people, both at the personal level and at the level of the broader level of society, in particular in how we treat criminals. Well, do I think it matters? So my view is that if causal determinism is true, and actually more exactly, if we're causally determined by factors beyond our control or factors beyond our causal reach in every action we perform, then we don't have a certain kind of free will. In particular, we don't have the sort of control required for what I call basic desert, which is the idea that we deserve blame, for example, for actions that we knowingly, bad actions that we knowingly perform just because we've performed them. Okay? So if determinism is true, and in particular if we're causally determined in all of our actions by factors beyond our control, then I think it's clear that we don't have this sort of free will. Now, if indeterminism is true, right, so if it turns out to be the case that we're not causally determined in all of our actions, then I think that we may have this sort of free will, right, but we also may not. It really depends on what we turn out to be as agents. So if what's often called state causal indeterminism is true, or event causal indeterminism, that indeterminism is true, but all of our actions result from states that involve us, then that's not going to be good enough for this sort of free will. But if we're agent cause, if we as agents cause our actions, fundamentally as substances, then I think that it's possible that we have this sort of free will. It's just unlikely that we're indeterministic agent causes of the sort that's required for this sort of freedom. Well, in a way we can't, in a way we can. So I think that our moral responsibility practice is actually quite complex. It involves a lot of different goals, a lot of different purposes. One of them is this: when we think of people who do really bad things, we typically think that they basically deserve blame and punishment for what they've done just because they've done it. So that's one aspect of the moral responsibility practice. More accurately, the practice of holding each other morally responsible. But if we think of how we treat our children, for example, when they misbehave, do we blame them in order to give them what they deserve? And I think that maybe that's sometimes the case, but typically we blame them in order to educate them morally, right? In order to initiate a process of moral formation. Sometimes we blame friends not in order to give them what they deserve, but rather so that to begin a process of reconciliation. So our moral responsibility practice has a lot of different goals. I think that the basic desert invoking side of our moral responsibility practice is going to be undermined if we don't have the sort of free will I'm talking about. But I think that these forward-looking aspects, like reconciliation, moral formation, protection, I think that they remain in place even if we don't have free will. So the answer is a little bit complicated. Turns out that a very important part of the practice of holding each other morally responsible is retained even if we don't have free will, but there is a pretty significant part that we'll have to give up. It's a fantastic cruise. It's unbelievable. This is such a beautiful place, it's wonderful that we've been given the opportunity to see Greenland, especially this time of year with such fantastic weather.